Okay, everyone, it is time to do our backing of our quilt. Are you ready? Hey everyone, Cristin here, and we are pretty much finishing up our quilt. We have one more tutorial after this. We'll do the embellishments, but for this one we are going to do the backing and the binding. So if you didn't order your binding, or I'm sorry, your backing, make sure to do that. I've heard from a couple of people that said, oh, they forgot to order backing. It does not come in the fabric kit. It's a separate item. So you can get it from our sponsor, My Girlfriend's Quilt Shop. You will need 2 2/3 of a yard of backing material. It is this green with swirls on it. Is the official one. You could use whatever you want for your backing, but you need 2 2/3 yard for your backing. And then after we do our backing, we will do the binding. And the binding is the red Christmas stripes fabric. And for that, we'll need a 1/2 yard. All right, 1/2 yard for our binding. So if you've been with me on other quilts, you know that I have quite a few tips on this process, and I will share them all as always. So the first starter one is get good pins. Seriously, good pins. Safety pins. Sharp, good ones. All right, you can see I have I think 2 or 3 different sizes, and I will add links under this video to the ones that I've purchased. I've actually bought a few different sets of pins and decided only to use these. I bought some pretty colorful ones. They were useless, totally useless. You want sharp pins. You're going through several layers of fabric. So what we are going to do is we are going to lay out our entire backing fabric. I'm going to iron mine first since it's been sitting in a bag. So lay out your entire backing fabric and then put your quilt on top of it. And then what I do is I pin each square. Every single block, I put a pin in it. And then I embroider, golly. I sew each block. So around the block, you're using your stitch in the ditch foot if you have it, or a move it foot, and I will share photos of that when I start the process. But bottom line is you're stitching in the ditch all the way around the block, and once I go all the way around the block, then I take the pin out, and that's how I know that each square is done, so that I'm not going back and forth trying to see the backing. So it's not very easy, right, to see what you've accomplished. So it's easier if you use this pin system. I think that's what works for me. You do you, right? Whatever works for you. But I have found that this works really well. You want to start in the middle of your quilt, and like I said, square box all the way around, and then you take out that pin, and you know that that one is done when all 4 sides are sewn, stitched in the ditch. All right, and I'll show you the different feed options and some tips along the way. And then once the backing is on, I will show you how I do the binding. You figure out whatever works for you. In the directions, it just says quilt and bind as desired, but I'm going to go through step by step of how I do it, and if that works for you, join along. But we are really coming toward the end of this project. So let's go ahead and get started. And if you haven't seen it before, this is a stitch in the ditch foot. It has this part down the middle, and so it kind of makes it like it's parting the fabric so that you can stitch right in that ditch there. See that right here? I only have it for a regular foot though, and I used to do all my quilts with this and it works great, no problems at all. But then I started learning about the Move It foot, and I don't know if the Move It fit is just a Brother and Baby Lock thing, if other brands have it. There's even a couple of them, and I am not an expert on feet at all, but this is the one I used to use a lot. And now with my bigger machine, I've got this big Move It foot, and I'm using that. And they actually both work really well. But anyway, there's different feet options. Whatever works for you will make your job a little bit easier in stitching in the ditch. Okay, so just a quick check-in. So you can see I'm getting each of my squares stitch in the ditch around them, and then as I complete them, I'm taking out the pins. There's still several because I haven't done them all yet, but there are several that are already done, and it just makes it so easy to finish up a block and then take out the pin. So here's what the back looks like. You can see, hopefully you can see that it's got all the stitching. So a couple of things. I've been asked if I put an extra layer of batting in between, and you absolutely can do that. I don't ever do that. I figure it's hard enough getting these through the throat of our machine. I'm not adding extra bulk. The positive of doing it, from what I've heard, people say that it will hang better if it has that extra layer of batting. I think they hang great. I only use these as wall hangings and they do great. So I don't feel the need to add extra batting. The other question I get is, what color bobbin do I use? I use my regular white bobbin. You could absolutely use the color of bobbin that matches your back fabric. That will work perfectly fine. I kind of like seeing the stitching personally, so I don't do that, but whatever works for you is fine. And we're just continuing to stitch in the ditch. So you can use your regular foot, you can use a stitch in the ditch foot, you can use a Move It foot. That's what I'm using. It just helps to feed it along, no problem. But any of these will work just fine. So anyway, I'm going to get back to my quilt. All right, so one thing I forgot to mention, and I forgot to use it even. Oh my goodness. So I finished my stitch in the ditch and it looks great. I'm pretty happy with it. But you know what I forgot to mention is you can use invisible thread. Mono something. I don't remember what it's called. But there are several of them. I buy mine on Amazon. Your local quilt shop probably has it too. I'm not sure. But I will add links to the ones that I prefer. I like this sulky one, and I like Gutermann. I like both of these. They're all pretty similar, but there's one that I bought that I really didn't like. It was like fishing wire, and this just makes it so that you're not going to see when you have it not perfectly in the ditch. So try not to stress too much about it. It doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, for the most part, I can't see my stitching, and I used white thread. I'm surprised I totally forgot. But every now and then you'll see a little bit, probably can't even see it, but there's a little bit where I didn't get it exactly in the ditch. So just don't stress about it. Enjoy the process. You know me, I feel pretty strongly about that, enjoying the journey. So anyway, these are on Amazon. I will add a link under the video. These were great. I forgot I used white, so don't stress over it if you don't have it, but get your stitch in the ditch going. and add that backing, and then I'm going to start on the binding next. Hey everyone, so once you have all of your back fabric on and stitched in the ditch and the edges trimmed and ready, then we're going to do the binding. So I do binding a little bit differently than I think most people do. You do whatever works for you. I will show you how I do it, but you don't have to do it that way. That's just what works for me. So you're going to start with your red stripe fabric, and we need 6 pieces that are 2 1/4 inches times the width of fabric. 2 1/4 inches. I have always cut mine a little bit larger, a little bit wider than 2 1/4 inches. So this will be my first time doing it with 2 1/4. But it does say in the directions 6 strips of 2 1/4 inches times width of fabric, and it is this red and green stripe. So this is for our binding. It's the last step for our quilt other than the embellishments, but for a completed quilt we will do the binding. So I will show you all the rest in photos, and let's go ahead and get started with our binding. Okay everyone, so as I mentioned, I do my binding a little bit differently. I'm going to show you how I do it. You do what works for you. I have my binding roll on the bobbin thing, I think it is. I've always done it that way. It just works easily for me. There are binding holder things that work as well, and I have them. I just haven't tried them. So we're going to start with the back of our fabric, okay? And if you have space, it helps to have like a table or a chair or something next to your quilt. You don't want drag. You don't want this to start pulling at all. You want it to have enough room, as much room as possible, a dining room table, something like that. Anyway, so start with the back of your quilt and start with the raw edge of the binding, all right? The raw edge. So, and I just lay it against the edge here. And I'm using a decorative stitch. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on here. Probably not. Anyway, it's just a little wiggly line. Well, let's see if we can, no, can't zoom, sorry. It's just a little wiggly line. But excuse me, this is a really good opportunity to do like a snowflake or something cute. I have found that I just kind of want to get through it. I don't want to spend too much time having it go backing on the stitching, and but I've done it before. It just takes longer. I did one with a bicycle trim, and oh my gosh, that is just so cute. And so if you want to invest time into it, there's lots of options of cute decorative stitches. I'm just using a little like swirly a little bit so that it's just all one straight line, and or not straight, but one swirly line, and it's not going to do a lot of back stitching, and it doesn't have to be perfect. That's one nice thing too, is it has room for error. All right, so like I said, edge to edge, raw edge to the edge of your quilt on the back side. And then what I do is I open this up and I fold it like this. Hopefully you can see, my fingers are probably in the way. I just fold it down into like a triangle. You see that a little bit? And then I fold it back. So I've got a little pocket. If you've seen any of my other videos, this is how I've always done mine. It's just easy. So I have this little pocket right here. Oops, sorry. Right in there, there's a little pocket to put the tail of the binding when we get all the way around. We'll put the little tail in there and stitch it down, and it just is very simple. I'll try to show in photos as well so that you can see up close a little bit better. But anyway, and then we're just gonna stitch it down. For this first one, you're not gonna want your decorative stitch. You want just a plain stitch. When we turn it over for the back side, that's when we'll use our decorative stitch. So for now, just a regular stitch. And we're just going to tack the batting down all the way, and I'll show you how to get your mitered corners once we get to the corner. All right, I'm going to try and hold the camera and do this one-handed so you can see up close. So raw edge of our binding here, I open it up and I fold it down like this, sorry. Okay, like that, and then like that. All right, and it just gives me this little pocket here, and I'm going to stitch this down, leaving the pocket open for a little bit so that I can place the tail in there. Okay, I like to mark about a half an inch away from the end. I use a pencil and a ruler. You can use a pin, you can eyeball it, it's not going to matter. And then I just back up a bit to lock down that stitch and cut it off. And then I pull it out. And to make the mitered corner, all you're going to do is do a 45 angle at that corner here by folding it on itself. So if you go all the way to the end here and then up and then just angle it to exactly a 45 degree, is it 45? I think it's 45. All right. And you're just eyeballing it, getting it right at that corner there. And you're just literally, you've got your fabric down here and then you pull it up over itself and angle it so that this part is straight. And then once you have it straight at that corner, then you hold it there for a second and bring it down over itself, straight, lined up with the edge. All right, just like that. That's how easy it is to get the first part of your mitered corner. All right, and then you're gonna pivot. Do the Ross on Friends pivot. All right, and I start right from the start up there and lock it down again, holding this against the edge. All right. Okay, so we're about a ½ inch from another mitered corner, so I'm going to back up a little bit, lock it down, that part's optional, and then cut. You just want to make it so that you can pull it away, and hopefully you can see. So we're going to just get it at a 45-degree angle from that corner and making this part straight. All right, just like that. And then pull it down over itself, lining it up with that edge. And pivot. And we're ready to go, holding it in place. All right, and then line it up at the top. And we're ready to go. Okay, hopefully you can see this. We're coming up on another ½ inch corner. I mark it with a pencil and a ruler. You can eyeball it or use a pin, whatever works. All right, and then I back it up, lock it down, and cut. All right, that makes it so I can bring it out, and then I am going to roll it up on itself at a corner. So my goal is this corner and keeping this side straight. So I am just moving it around until it's straight, and you can tell, like, if it's all wonky, then it's not going to make a very good mitered corner. Hopefully my fingers aren't too much in the way. I can't see what you're seeing until I start editing, sorry. But at the corner and straight, and then once you have it straight and at the corner, then you just fold it down on itself, keeping it at that edge. All right, and lined up on the edge, and pivot. So I've never done this before with cleaning off my entire other table, and it is so much easier. So I highly recommend, like, if you have a craft space that you can clear off, or if you have a dining room table you can use, that it makes it so much easier to have all the extra quilt over on the side so that you're not having drag. If it drags, it will pull your stitching, and it makes it really difficult. All right, so then from the start, and then we are just going to make sure it's lined up on the edge, and go for it. All right, so hopefully you can see this. I'm going to turn it around to make sure you can see. So we are near the pocket now, and we are just going to, you can overlap it and just see, you just want it to go past this part here where the pocket is. That's all. It doesn't really matter after that. And you don't want it too far, because once you get to the stitching, you won't be able to fit this in there. All right, so just from where before the stitching started, anywhere there, you want to just cut it, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to just hide inside of that pocket. All right, and you can trim it a little more if you need a little more. Take a second here and get it in the pocket straight so that it's not lumpy. I think I'll cut mine a little bit more. All right, and once you have it in that pocket nice and straight, then we're just going to stitch it closed. How easy is that? All right, let's do it. Finish up this part, and then we will turn it over and do the back, or the front. Actually, it will be the front. We're on the back now. All right, are you ready to finish this up? So now we are on the front of our quilt, and what I do is I just kind of clean out. Let's turn this a little bit. There we go, down there. All right, so all these little edges, you just kind of want to get them out of the way, but you can trim them later if any of them peek through. But all I do is I pull the back of the binding over to the front, and I think some people clip it, put it all in and do clips. I just do little bits at a time, and that works fine. So now is when you want to do that decorative stitch. You can do a regular stitch, you can do a simple stitch, you can do a very decorative stitch. I'm going to do a little happy medium, so mine is just a little swirly. I'm just getting all those little strings out of the way. I am using my Taffy thread color. You can use whatever thread color that you choose. And I am using my Move It foot. And like I said, I'm just pulling this over. I normally do a little bit larger than 2 1/4, and so this is my first time doing it with a 2 1/4 inch binding. So a little less wiggle room, but that's okay. All right, so I'm just starting about the middle here. I'm going to put my foot down and my needle down. Let's see. It's hard to tell where the decorative stitch is going to start. It looks like it's going to go up a little, so I'm going to start a little higher up. Okay. Okay. And then I just hold it and stop every so often to pull the next bit over. And it doesn't have to be perfect. All right, when you get to the end, to that mitered corner, or that we're going to make into a mitered corner, you're going to just kind of push your finger in there to get it straight, to open up that edge. And then I just stitch all the way to the end of this, holding it in place. All right, and then I cut the thread, pull it out a little, and I am going to just, again, hold that corner down in the edge here, and then turn it And look at that, we have our mitered corner. Okay, we're nearing the corner again. So again, I just stitch all the way to the end here. And you want this at that 45-degree angle. All right, and then pull it out and get it where you have your 45-degree by just pushing this enough over. And then you're going to do that pivot. I like to not have it dragging on the floor because then it makes it harder to stitch. It drags and pulls. All right. In. And once you get it where it looks good, then you're going to get it back under your needle, starting from the top. Okay, here we are at a corner again. So I'm going to stitch all the way to the end, and I'm keeping this at that angle here. Pull it out so you can see it. Make sure that this is all the way straight. Get all those little edges in there and fold it over. Getting it at that 45-degree with as little bulk in there as possible. And pivot. All right.